everyone. Welcome to this Informed Consent. What is this? Number 14. Evie is with me tonight, and today we are going to be discussing a lot of amazing things. But first, I just want to say, hey. Hi, Evie.
Hi.
We have Ryan in the back helping out, and we've got probably Mike in the comments. So this is a live cast, so this is where you participate, and we're going to bring you into the conversation whenever that makes sense. And tonight, we are going to be talking about this bad feeling I've got. And I want to make sure that I communicate this because, well, we'll talk about a number of other things, including our unserious leaders and the fact that I think they're driving us into a ditch, folks. Can we be honest about this? Now, I'm one of these people that will have more data, more context than almost anybody else I know about. But when it comes right down to it, I make all my decisions, usually my big ones, based on intuition. Like something just tells me it's time. So, story time. Evie and I are living in a little town called Greenfield, Massachusetts. Calls itself a city, but I don't know. What are we talking about?
It's not really.
It's somewhere.
Tiny.
It's a mutant city town. Little place, but certainly not, the house of our dreams, but not bad. Nice half acre in town. It backs up on a river. It was really nice. But right around August of 2019, just prior, sometime in July, we started to get this feeling like, uh-oh, we got to go. And so remember, Evie, we invited all these people in. We had a Plan B conversation. I don't know, 30 people showed up from all over. Mike Maloney flew all the way up from Puerto Rico.
I do remember
Nico
this. Yep, I
and
recall.
Dan, remember? And they rented a Tesla because gotta drive a Tesla.
Of course.
They came all the way up just to have this conversation, which is, should we have a Plan B? Now, Mike Maloney, if you know him, he's if you don't follow him, you should. He's a wonderful teacher. Hidden Secrets of Money. He started goldsilver.com. I consider him to be a very good friend. And he, in the context of doing all of his work and also parsing through the work that I do in the world, had decided the right answer was to own 900 acres on top of a mountain in Puerto Rico. So that's where he's at with his crew. And they're busy putting in solar. And
how's he doing? I haven't heard from him for a while. Is he doing well?
they're doing great. But the thing is, it's an island. And so small, let's say, not fully developed nation states, it's very tricky getting stuff into the country. They have import duties, there's palms to be greased. People don't have any incentive to work quickly at their bureaucratic jobs. A lot of make work, busy work on the bureaucratic side. It's just so, like, this guy orders windows, and it's a year and a half.
Wow. So is he behind where he'd like to be?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you'd like to just order this stuff and have the big brown truck of happiness roll on in. And bring it to you tomorrow.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
So we have this feeling that maybe we should talk to other people about having a Plan B, but that immediately translated into, by August, this idea that, no, we better do something about this. So I went into this tizzy. I have a whole process for how I'm going to find a Plan B location. We developed a whole list of criteria, must-haves, semi-negotiables, non-negotiables, things like that. And so we set about looking for the ideal property. And we looked in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, didn't seriously consider New York for a variety of reasons, not least of which were their gun laws at the time, although the Supreme Court has dialed those back a tiny bit. Hey, hello from Lakeland, Florida. Good to see you in here. So we didn't consider Florida, though, for a bunch of reasons, and not least of which was on our non-negotiable list was soil. And I think North Florida actually is different. North Florida has soil. South Florida doesn't. It has some kind of limestone, some marl limestone stuff.
Sand.
So we went into this tizzy, and within a month, I could have told you every single property that was available on for sale by owner, Zillow, Redfin, LandVest. I checked every possible thing. I was calling realtors to find out if there was any of that amazing stuff that hasn't quite hit the market yet. Going around, and we actually made a couple offers that fell through, thankfully. And we were really close to a property in further western Mass than where we are, and that we couldn't quite make it work. There were too many sort of like squint at it, almost make it work kind of things. And then a perfect property showed up, and this was in November. And I remember we were on our way back from saying no to a property that we'd investigated multiple times and made a soft offer on, saying, would you guys consider a super low ball? Things like that. And we called the realtor and said, hey, we just see this thing come up. Can we stop by? And so we drove onto this property here in Western Mass. We got out of our car, and we'd walked, maybe 100 yards into the field, And it's all done. Full price offer to the realtor on the spot. Didn't even see the houses on the property yet.
Yeah, that's supposed to be my line right there.
Yeah.
We didn't even see the houses. No,
We didn't even see the
because
houses.
typically women are like, okay, let me make sure this has what I want, and blah blah blah. But we didn't care. We knew it was home, sort of in our gut, basically, right?
Yep.
That's what I felt.
Yep. So, some scrambling because, the sellers had a variety of, it was tense. Remember? We had to write a letter to them explaining why we wanted it because we thought that would give us an edge.
Yeah.
There were mysterious other offers that crept in right at the last minute, which I'm a little suspicious of. Not on the sellers, but anyway, it's just an odd thing that happened there. And then they wanted us to waive inspections. And they wanted all cash. So it was like I had to really scramble to figure out how to put this together. So
I remember. You did a great job with that.
A lot of scrambling. And so we got it. And this is an extraordinary property. It has a working dam on a named brook. It has that we're going to be able to put hydro on. It has a spring that's 200 feet in elevation, about 2,000 feet from the house, where we have water coming out of a pipe down a hill with no moving parts at about 110 psi, 30,000 gallons a day if we chose to use it, if we just left it running. It has excellent soil that hasn't been industrially raped by the standard modern farming agricultural practice, had all these things, right? So we end up closing on that. This was November 2019. We made the offers, accepted, takes a number of weeks. We closed on that on January 28th, 2020. Within a month of that, because of COVID and all these people flooding out of the cities, there was not a single other property like this, for sale anywhere. In fact, now it's still ridiculously hard. All these people flooding out of the city. So why did I know COVID was coming? Did we know COVID was coming? Nope. We knew something was coming.
Yeah.
Didn't we?
We did. We had crazy dreams. I've talked with other friends about this. We had crazy dreams. We just had that impending sort of doom feeling. And there was nothing more absurd than, the usual going on in the news. There wasn't any surefire indicators or whatnot, but I think you just trusted your gut intuition, and I felt it too. And we were both ready to put down more significant roots, and we were clear from where we had been living that the traffic and the nonstop sort of sound of cars and trucks going by was just not conducive for us anyhow. It wasn't quite the, kind of nice walk to a place community that we desired.
Right. Well, I have that same bad feeling again.
Oh, great.
I have it again.
No.
And I can't explain what it is. So there's something to that. I'm a huge believer in head and heart, right? So that I analyze the bejesus out of everything. Quantitatively, I can explain all kinds of things to you. Why, of course, this is an unsustainable paradigm and regime that we're in, energetically, economically, financially, environmentally. There's a lot of things we're doing that you can just look at and go, well, those aren't going to continue for very much longer. We know that, but always the timing is the tricky part. So my view of the world, for what it's worth, is that when I have a bad feeling about something, it doesn't mean that's going to happen. It means that the future is an unknown set of probabilities. And some of those probabilities are more weighted than others. And when I get these feelings like this, it means there's a weighting that something could happen out there, right?
Maybe it's about your future as well.
It could be about my future.
Like
we don't know.
Relative to you, whereas somebody else having their own intuition will be relative to their life. You know what I mean? So maybe
Could be.
Your gut feeling has nothing to do with anybody else.
It's possible. But I tend to think I'm more tapped into the larger set of what's happening. So, but I want to read this one comment that just came in. So let's go to the slides real quick here and check this out. I have a bad feeling. So I took this person's name off because I didn't get permission to put out here, and this was behind our paywall. So this is the kind of comments that we're dealing with over at Peak Prosperity. Our subscribers are free to talk. We're total free speech advocates, but let's be honest, there's certain things you want to talk about that you really shouldn't talk about in total public anymore. Because why? Because the world's gone crazy. It's gone insane, especially if you're in Canada. I'm sorry, dudes and dudettes up there. That's tough up there. This person writes, quote, generally in my day-to-day life, I am usually very positive and optimistic, but despite my planning and foreseeing what's coming, Chris, you are way ahead of me as are other people here, I'm finding that I'm having an adjustment reaction. It's just hit me. It's real. This is enemy action. And this is now our war. Maslow's hierarchy is so important. Food, water, shelter, all of these things are being attacked, and they know how to tear down the human spirit, and they won't stop. However bad we imagine it could be, I think it might be worse. We must find lots of comfort and genuine human spirit among like-minded people, and that's what I treasure about peak prosperity. End quote. So if you didn't see last week's, an adjustment reaction is the ever-present, very normal, very human, we all go through it, reaction when a new risk emerges, and we have to process it in some way, shape, or form. So at the most immediate level, they teach you that if you do concealed carry, that if somebody draws on you, it's going to take you at least 1 3/4 to possibly 2 seconds to just even process what's happening. Route that stimulus through your cortex and develop a plan of action, which might result in you beginning to move. So that's at the shortest level. At the higher level, we might imagine, longer level would be something really big and momentous happening. Like imagine what those people were doing when they're standing in the South Tower of the World Trade Center, and there's all these papers fluttering down and from the North Tower being hit, and there's they've just heard that there's been this massive explosion. Nobody quite can process what's going on, and you have to go to work, and maybe you're late, and you're at the 78th floor transfer station, and you have a decision to make. Do I go up or do I go down? That would take a much longer time to process and think through. Sadly, people who had slow adjustment reactions in that moment didn't survive because they went up. A lot of people did go down in that story. So this adjustment reaction is just that normal human reaction to whatever's going on. And so just as a quick review, because we did cover this last time, but these are the adjustment reaction steps. First, the adjustment reaction, it's automatic. It's like if you walk along a path and there's a snake in front of you, you're going to have an automatic reaction. Oh, it's just a garden hose. Oh, But that instant reaction is going to be astonishing.
It's like, or if you're a cat, it's a cucumber. Or whatever.
Oh, I wish we had a cat with a cucumber. If you don't know what we're talking about, Google cats with cucumbers. It's kind of funny. It comes early. It is temporary, right? So that reaction part is going to get, it'll go by quickly once it's there. Let me silence my phone here because I shouldn't be doing that. But this is the one I wanted to talk about here. Number 4. It's going to be a small overreaction. In fact, when people face huge, giant risks, they always realize that whatever reaction they had is overreactive as it seemed at the time. Like, oh my God, we got to move where we live and we're going to buy a new farm, right? That to a lot of our friends and family is like, what are you guys doing?
What's wrong with you?
It looked like a huge overreaction. Looking back, they're like, oh yeah, you should have bought 2. One for me.
Right, exactly.
It always looks like an underreaction in the rear view mirror. So this is permission. I give you permission. If you feel like you have one of these moments you have to react to, feel free to overreact. It's very difficult to overreact when you're facing a big new sort of a crisis coming along.
Well, because good news. You know what? When you think about it, if nothing does happen, I mean, aside from it being a bit of a headache to go back to wherever you used to live, if you made the wrong choice, it's always a possibility, right? Depending on, what your situation is, of course. But life is full of wonderful twists and turns and just waiting for us to say yes to things. So in some respects, I mean, there's everything to gain and not a whole lot to lose if you're following that intuition and it happens to be guiding you towards safety and wellness for you and your family.
Well, it's all of life. Life is a flow. It's not static. So sometimes what you're reacting to says you got to dodge, you got to move, you got to flow in a new direction. Well, that's fine. It's totally fine. That can often be the best thing for you in that moment, even if it's hard at the time, right? Ooh, this relationship isn't the right one for me. Sometimes you get that bump that says, oh, this isn't the right one. So you go off, and then a few years later, you're like, man, I should have pulled the plug on that one earlier, And
phew, I dodged a bullet.
Or whatever. So yeah, so I'm getting this feeling now, and
yeah, what does that mean for you? What is a feeling? How does that show up for you? I'm just curious. Is it in your body? Is it pervasive thoughts? Is it attention?
It's definitely in my body. It's I have a tight jaw. I just have almost like I walk around like a dog waiting to get hit with a newspaper because I'm waiting for something. I can feel a blow coming. It's like when I wake up in the morning and I get up early and I start doing my information scouting for my subscribers, the first thing I do is I'm just touring the world of information, what's on Twitter and what's
Wait,
happening
you
at
sleep?
Reddit. And yeah, I do sleep sometimes. And, I have all these different information sources. So, but I'm often finding myself kind of like increasingly, I just trepidation almost like, like what am I going to find? And I'm expecting something to break, it's not going to, I won't find it all that surprising if we find out some new hostilities break out with Russia or there's something going on with China and Taiwan, something geopolitical, something war-based, something kinetic, something really bad happening in the energy space, something, a huge giant wipeout in the financial markets or something like that. But I can feel it coming. I'm really worried for everybody in Europe at this stage. Because as bad as our leadership has been in the U.S., it's worse in Europe by an order of magnitude at this point. And we can cover some of that data in just a bit. I don't feel like something's happening too, where, as that commenter said, like this is war, right? It's enemy action, right? Whoever they are, they're attacking all these different things. So I can drink from 2 fire hoses of information at once, but now I'm being asked to drink from 3. It's too much for me. Like if I wanted to, I could make a full-time profession out of just trying to find out what new assault on the food system has happened this week.
Right.
Right?
So true. Yeah.
Which
You dialed it in.
fertilizers aren't available, which farm components, which chemicals and pesticides that they need because of the type of farming they're doing, which food plant exploded, which area is having a grain malfunction, which place has too much rain to plant, which has too little rain to grow. It's just it's a full-time job just trying to figure out what's going on in the food system.
Mm-hmm.
Another full-time job was you just tracking where it's breaking and how it's breaking. Sri Lanka just declared they said flat out, their prime minister, we're in an economic collapse.
Wow.
Full on, full blown. Western media was like, well, we'll give that 1 hour of attention, right? I mean, but it's a big
This
deal.
was a little bit ago, right?
Well, it's still ongoing.
Right, I'm sure.
I mean, but it broke
I'm sure,
2 or 3 weeks ago. It started 4 weeks ago. It started to get bad when we
That's when it
first
broke.
talked about it. But Ecuador, huge protest. The indigenous people have said enough, and so their oil wells are all shut down right now. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. You know who gets a lot of oil from Ecuador? California. Right, so these things are going to all sort of spill over, and that's why I feel like I have to track just where's that social unrest right now. And it's everywhere. Or I could just be tracking what's going on in the bond markets, watching things really begin to disintegrate in Europe, and soon coming to a theater near you, on and on and on. So each one of these things is on its own. It's kind of like that saying from Lenin, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. So
That's a
part
great
of,
one.
Yeah, so we're in one of those weeks where decades are happening. So this is part of why, when I can't synthesize it all cognitively, my body takes over and just absorbs all of these pieces of information and goes, uh-oh.
Something's wrong.
Uh-oh. Well, I mean, what are you feeling?
Aside from the crud.
You want to explain what that is?
Yeah. Well, I mean, can I say it? Yeah, I can say it.
Yeah, we
right?
call it the cerveza sickness.
The cerveza sickness. Okay.
We're taking after George Gamble.
We have that. We got that recently in our travels from some other traveler, I'm guessing. But yeah, I'm just feeling I got hit again with like a high fever, no chills, body aches, headache, foggy brain. So I'm just trying to hold on to
It's like
normal life. Never mind
it's like the
tapping
flu.
into
Well,
other things.
It hit you
but
harder than me. I think, I don't know why, but
I don't know either.
because you're younger than me, you should be healthier.
Yeah, but for other sets of reasons, my body has its own stress that it's dealing
Yeah.
with. So
But what I did, which might have been different, was I got on that throat spray really quick and early because the FLCCC doctors had told me, they said the Omicron really replicates in the nasopharyngeal
Right.
region. So there's sprays you can put up, which are iodine-based, they sting a little. And then a
Yeah.
throat spray, which doesn't sting as much. But both of those actually, on surface, when the virus is replicating and coming out of the tissue, it runs into a wall of death. And so that really helps knock
Right.
it back. I got on that early, so I think that helped me a lot.
I think it must have. I think it must have. And it was weird too because we were traveling, so it was hard to know. Like, well, am I feeling just kind of down and tired?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't pick up on the normal signs of sickness as early as I
Yeah.
might have otherwise.
Yeah, and we were also stressing it out. I mean, we were traveling.
Oh, traveling was a nightmare.
I was out there presenting and
That was
being I
awful.
was on, right? I was on the whole time.
I know you were, but I mean, from a travel perspective, it's also a nightmare out there. As
Oh, God.
for anybody that
Yeah.
hasn't experienced it recently, it's worse than it's ever been in my lifetime.
Well, hey, oh yeah, Dr. Zev Zelenko. Dr. Zelenko died today.
Oh no!
He'd been battling cancer for a while. That
I
was
didn't-
I'm really sad to hear that.
That's-
What a hero that
stinks.
guy is. He put it all on the line.
Yeah, he really did actually.
What a firebrand too. He didn't back down. So yeah, hey, thank you for that comment there. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Zev was a true hero of our times and one of those people who ought to have gotten a Nobel, I believe. I think he was nominated by somebody.
Was he?
Yeah, he was a good guy. We exchanged plenty of emails, but we never quite got on each other's shows somehow. So
Bummer.
yeah.
That stinks.
So with this,
We were talking about travel before that.
well, yeah, jeez. Oh,
That
and
comment came
we
up.
d- I don't. Hey, Dan.
Oh, and you're distracted again.
Dan.
Squirrel.
Squirrel. Hey, Dan.
Ryan?
Dan, if that's you, I got your message. We'll talk, okay? We'd love to have you come back out.
Yeah, we miss you.
Dan, I think, is a local gentleman from Massachusetts. So we are gathering our local tribe. You should be doing this where you live, too. So it's just time to figure out, who's going to be in that. If you had to circle the wagons, who's in that circle with you? That's an important question to know and answer at this point in time. But one of the things that we experienced traveling, which is, well, I'm swearing off it for a while, Evie's swearing off it, was we didn't have a single flight that wasn't somehow delayed, canceled, interrupted, and it's just a nightmare. Nobody knows what's happening. The poor staff there
Oh,
don't know what's
frazzled,
happening.
Tired.
Sado Vose, they're like, this is bullshit, because it really is just awful out there. So it's stressful and all that. So
It really was. It was
Yeah.
intense. We made it home, but
at any rate, but I mean, it's just one of those things. So this is the reason I'm really quite sketchy at this point in time is because I track the macro stuff and I can't predict what's going to happen. I can just tell you that things are going to emerge from the conditions that are being put in place. What I mean by emerge, a complex system is an unpredictable thing. We humans can't predict complex systems. So an earthquake fault line is a complex system. It's got a lot of pieces and the feedback loops and all this and that. We've studied them. We humans have studied them for a very long time. People would love to be able to predict when's an earthquake going to happen. Despite all of this study, you know what we can't do? We can't predict two things about earthquakes: when they're going to happen and how big they're going to be. Can't do it. But what we can tell you is that as more and more time passes without an earthquake, as the pressures are building, as we can detect that the plates are moving, but the earthquake fault line hasn't let go, we can now say also two things. We can say that as more time passes, the chance of an earthquake happening sooner than later goes up, and the chance that that's going to be a larger earthquake rather than a small one also goes up. But that's it. Otherwise, we have to sort of wait, and then the earthquake fault line ruptures, and then we have an earthquake, and we get to see what emerges. How big was it? How long was it? How deep was it? All kinds of fun things, right? So this is the nature of the beast right now, is that what we're experiencing is that the economy that we all live within, with all of its components, supply chains and pieces and widgets going here and there, and 30,000 mile long supply chains to just create, I mean, this phone probably traveled 30, 40,000 miles before it ended up in my hot little hands if you tracked all the components in there. All right.
right.
So as we starve that sort of a complex system for energy, I can tell you this for sure. It's going to simplify. That's a euphemism for less economic activity. I can't predict which. That's beyond me. Humans are a complex operating system within a complex operating system known as the energy system, which is itself nested within an economic system, etc. These are all nested complex systems. Sounds fancy, and what it means is we can't predict what's going to happen, except I will tell you that starving it for energy is a particularly bad idea, particularly the pace. So this is what I was just talking about when I was down. We were in Belize talking to the Summit at Sand with Robert Helms and Russ Gray's amazing group of people down there. If you ever have a chance to go, you should. I mean, it sells out, but it's more like a family reunion than a conference. But man, I learned stuff there. What I delivered to them, George Gammon was there, Daniel DiMartino Booth, and they were talking the economics. So I thought, well, I better talk about the pace of change. That's what I wanted to go, because it's not the destination. Like falling out of a plane is fine. Hitting the ground sucks, right?
Yeah.
The pace. Yeah, so that's part of why I have such a bad feeling right now. The pace of change is too fast for too many things. How expensive energy is right now, how fast it rose, mortgage rates going up really quickly, abrupt decisions, supply lines getting cut off. There's just too much.
Right, I know it.
Too much too fast.
I've been feeling that reasonably as well. I mean, picking up on it as much as I possibly can in the midst of sort of feeling unwell. But I had a few thoughts the other day as we were traveling through airports. Everybody's bustling around and sort of business as usual. But, you know, even in Miami, for example, just so many people, hordes of people running around building giant skyscrapers and stuff. But just the whole idea of what's happening in terms of water shortages and the collapse of the economy, and just look at a place and think automatically, can I grow food there? Or, you know, could I exist without air conditioning? Or would I need to heat? I mean, just any number of those basic questions. The answer is no. I start to look at it through those eyes, and then I can't see it any other way. So I've been feeling that in my gut, just looking out the window at places I don't recognize, you know, that I'm not familiar with, being like, wow, what are they going to do when that day comes?
Well, we're very much bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of folks. So you and I, we share this, which is like, maybe we should know where our food comes from. Maybe we should be in charge of our own water system. Maybe we should be able to heat with wood or oil or electricity or whatever, right? So, yeah, having lots of options there. And so a place like Miami, to me, fun city, it doesn't have a lot of options. Right? They have soil down there. You can't really grow much there. You could build a box and grow stuff in it till the soil in the box got eaten up by the bacteria, you know, and fungi over time. But I don't know how you would survive there longer term.
Oh, and some of the stores were just, you know, I went to pick up some snacks for a trip, and it was pretty decimated.
Do you saw the bare shelves there?
Yeah.
I wonder how many bare shelves the average collection of humans need to see before some silent dog whistle goes off and they all go, uh-oh. You know?
It was strange, too. It was random things. It was like all the fresh fruit. Like, just for some reason in that one area, there was nothing.
No fresh fruit?
Like, some fresh fruit, like bananas, but other types of fresh fruit.
Yep.
Fruit was just all gone. Just classes of things, you know?
Yep. All right, well, let's
Anyhow.
I want to talk about Europe and this pace of change thing real quick here. So let's look at this. So this is a pace of change situation right here. The IEA, International Energy Agency, just came out. And they said Europe must be ready to cut gas use by 30% in winter. 30%?
That's a big drop.
Oh my God. So Europe uses a lot more gas than the United States, and they use it roughly by thirds for electricity production, for residential use, and for industrial use, commercial buildings. Thirds. So which third? Like, what are we going to do? If you had to cut by 30%, does everybody get 30% less? So it's like 30% colder in your house or however that works out? Or do they say, we'd like electricity, we want our people not freezing, so sorry, industry, right? Think of the shock that'll create. But it's the pace of it. You know, you give them a decade, they probably could figure out how to get through, manage, and do stuff. But you can't just. This is a flick the switch moment, right?
I know it.
So they say here widespread curtailments would be necessary if Moscow decides to halt flows completely. So, widespread curtailments. That's a euphemism for somebody's getting their gas shut off, right? The people in the
painful.
fluorescent uniforms and the hard hats come and they turn your little valve and that's it. whatever you were doing with that gas is now over.
Yeah, has that key you can't break. Yeah.
That's extraordinary. So, so look at this. Javier Blas writing here. I love how he writes. If you're not following him, you should. This is in Bloomberg. He writes there. I follow him on Twitter. Love the guy's approach to this stuff. He writes here, many winters are coming. Start saving energy now. Quote, the European manufacturing sector is already crumbling under the weight of sustained high electricity and natural gas prices with little prospect of relief. Another wave of curtailments and closures looms, and that's before any rationing of national natural gas, potentially later this year in Germany, in the event Russia reduces supply even further. In that scenario, many companies will have no choice but to shut down. Gas rationing may still be a distant prospect, but the crisis is already here. The price impact on industrial activity is arriving well before the gas supply is interrupted. Governments need to decide right now which companies will get financial support and which ones won't. And it's not just financial support. Obviously, if there's not enough gas for everybody, you're going to have to tell some folks, sorry. Now, this is the article, a chart that came with it. Look at 1 year. This is 1 year forward electricity prices. I hovered over and grabbed that date there on November 1st, 2020. That was 51 euros a megawatt hour, and now it's 200, closing in on 250 euros a megawatt hour. And this isn't like, well, electricity is expensive right now, so I'll ration a little. This is year forward electricity prices. So if you are a large manufacturer consuming a lot of power, a lot of electricity, you need to contract for that way in advance to know you have it. So you can tell your 10,000 workers to show up, and you can, do things. So that pig is already in the python. That price is there. There are people paying that right now. And even if prices fell sharply tomorrow, they're still going to pay that price in a year because they contracted. That's a forward 1 year contract. So this is how they're seeing those contracts play out in Europe already. That is a panic. Look at this. Look at this.
Crazy.
Look at this chart. This is amazing. The second thing I want you to note is the date on all this. Oh, it's Putin. I will note that Putin invaded right about here. If you can see where my little tiny mouse is, right there, right? Let me get my magic drawing tool out because I love that thing. Right here, February of 2022. If you can see that yellow skirmish right there. Yeah. I would suggest that politely that potentially electricity prices were climbing way before Putin had any designs on Ukraine of any sort. And so this is a disaster that's been a long time in the making. And Putin, to the extent he's being used as an excuse for anything, is really just weak leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to evade responsibility for something. But that's astonishing. So again, think about the pace of that change, though. If you're a manufacturer, say I'm a producer, you're my downstream customer, and I have people on this side of me too because I'm an intermediary producer, right? So I buy aluminum ingots, I use a lot of electricity, and I fashion them into these things you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a contract with these people, I have a contract with you, and all of a sudden my costs go like this. What do? I have to renegotiate with you. I have to say, hey, no offense, but I know we have a contract.
We got a good thing going, but...
And I'd really like you to keep buying my stuff, but I'm going to have to make this a lot more expensive for you, right?
Yeah.
If I have to do that once, it's painful. But you probably do that when it jumped from 50 to 70, because that's like a 40% increase. But when it went 50 to 100, it was a 100% increase.
Right.
But then it went from 100 to 200.
Right. How do you keep up with that?
How do you keep readjusting all of that? It's very difficult to do. And then you have customers on your end. You're like, every time you jack the price up, you're losing them. Right?
Oof. So many businesses.
It's very complex.
So many people are actually going to get hurt by this, I think.
It's got legal complexity. It's got actual market-based complexity. There's things happening. And by the way, your customers buying whatever your aluminum widget wingles were, they're probably facing the prospect soon because of the way they push out the electricity price increases into residential stuff. They're about to get a huge increase out in Germany. So there's going to be a lot of people there all of a sudden saying, oh, do I pay my electricity bill or do I buy these things from Evie, right? And in that decision, usually people default to the bottom of that, Maslow's need, right? We buy our food, we pay for our shelter, we make sure we're warm.
Shoot. Yeah, this could go pear-shaped so fast.
It could.
Like that.
It really could.
Because it really doesn't matter whether it's across the ocean or not, because it's a global economy. It really does not matter.
Yeah. Well, so in this Sahavier article, I like this paragraph that was way down near the bottom. He said, in private, European executives say they'll use the forthcoming quarterly reporting season in mid-July to announce more plant closures. The affected industries will be those that with the most intensive energy use: fertilizer, base metals and steel, chemicals, ceramic, glass, and paper. But increasingly, food production will be too. Heated greenhouses and chicken farms face astronomical energy bills.
What about all the junk that we're busy creating? All the tchotchke we don't really need.
Doesn't
Can't we just
consume that
get
much.
rid of that?
No, little yellow rubber ducks don't require that much energy to make.
Come on.
So you can. How many do you want?
Wow.
Well, but this is
What a blow.
fertilizers. Heated greenhouses. That's a big deal because this is. So I believe in the Netherlands, where the Dutch live, I think they have like the most greenhouses. I think they actually export more food than practically any other country when it comes to vegetables, because they just have literally square miles of
Right.
greenhouses.
They're like back to back.
Just whole valleys just full of greenhouses, right? And they're all heated, so they can grow things like peppers throughout the winter and things like that. Hugely energy expensive. So all of a sudden, if your energy bills go up by a factor of 5, do your peppers go up by a factor of whatever the corresponding component was?
Right.
You know,
And what
100%?
happens if they can no longer compete with peppers in other parts of the world? I mean, are you priced out? Do they fix the prices globally? I mean, how does this work? I could just see this falling perfectly into the script of that dystopian screenplay we've talked about. From
So when I'm ranting in the morning and we're very unsure who's listening, because that's we make sure to preface our rants by saying, I'm thinking of a new plot line for my fantasy dystopian screenplay. And hopefully that part makes it into the recording too, so that when we get that bad read in court someday, we can try and pawn it off as if our rants were just part of plot development or something like that. So when we were down at this conference with all these amazing people recently down in Belize, there was a gentleman there who was from Belize. Nope, sorry, Paraguay. We were in Belize, and he had an aquaponics company, a really big one, like the place where they're like huge factory-sized things, and you take the water and you put the nutrients in it and you grow things, right? Vegetables mostly.
Mm-hmm.
He said that after I gave my talk, he came right up, hustled right up and said, "Oh my God, Chris, you were absolutely right. Here's the thing. We had to shut down because we couldn't even get fertilizer. That the fertilizer in Paraguay, they don't have their own import port. So the fertilizer, any fertilizer that was coming, first comes into Buenos Aires and gets offloaded." He said it was all disappearing right there at the docks. He said, and we would get these calls every so often from my fertilizer supplier saying, "I have a truck right now. Here's the price." And he's like, "Oh my God, that's too much. I'll have to talk to my team." And the guy said, he's like, "You either give me a yes, no right now, because it's like you take it this second or it's gone." So he said, "Oh my God, it's just
Wow.
that's happening just all writ large."
They went out of business, right?
Nope.
Or they're still in business, but they just suffered a lot of
They
losses.
had to stop production for a while because they were
Okay.
out of fertilizer. And so anytime they can find some, now they're scrambling and they're trying to bring some down from Brazil. But it's a big deal, right? But that's an example of just like, if you're even in the business of growing arugula for the local markets, and you have a company that just does this aquaponics thing, you might be out of business because of what we just heard about. Businesses are making the decision to shut down production and being forced into that position.
So if this was your last cast out into the world to our people, what is it you really need to impart? Because who knows? We don't know how much time we all have with each other.
That's a good
None
question.
of us do,
Yeah.
I mean, what is it that you need to communicate to the other tribe members, to our other people out there, the fast adjusters, those who can manage to sort of stay with us even when it's hard and, have been following you for a decade or more?
I would say don't hesitate. Just get on with whatever your plans are for becoming resilient. I do think there's there's dark times coming.
Yeah.
And there's just too many decades of bad decisions, and I don't see any good decisions on the horizon. There's no, like, this isn't a Hollywood movie ending. It's more like one of those French films. You're like, that's the ending? You know,
It leaves you with this horrible, like,
a little
takeaway.
dark. You know?
Yeah.
So, but I don't see that there's any. I don't believe in the political structures at this point. In my country, I'm really cynical. I think we have a uniparty, so I'm not looking for any particularly gracious leadership to suddenly emerge and figure this out and be sensible. In fact, every single thing I've seen coming out of our leadership has been more nonsense than the stuff before. You're like, wow, the patient is bleeding out on the ground, and you've decided chest compressions are what you're going to do right now. It's like bizarre, right? Like, no, you got to stop you don't want to speed that up. You want to slow. What are you doing? Right? You know,
It's illogical.
it is bizarre. So it's sort of gather your tribe. That's the most important thing. I mean, listen, you know, we can all assemble as much material stuff. When I say get prepared, I don't mean buy stuff for your basement, sure, but that's nothing if you don't know how to use it. So you need to be working on your skills, of course. And then you need a group of people that you're going to rally with around this, because this isn't about surviving. It's about how we're going to thrive. This is the era in which we live. I believe we were all born into these moments.
Mm-hmm. We were
And
born for this time.
born for
yep.
this time. And either you're born for this time to be a bit player in some role, or you're born to really shine and bring something. And I think we're all being asked to show up and
Indeed.
really, really shine. But we have to have our adjustment reaction soon, because part of the adjustment reaction when there's a new risk, you have to give up what was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was, oh, that's how things were then. That's not how they are now. I gave two examples. One example, oh, I'm no longer safe. There is now a gun pointed at me, right? And I have to adjust to that. Or, hey, circumstances have changed. A big giant plane just hit a building. I have to figure out what's happening and adjust to that really quickly. When I show that one chart of that electricity price, that alone, if you could just just meditate and mantra on that, like that has the whole story contained within it.
I know.
That's the peak of a mountain you could dig under, and there's a lot of things under that
I know.
that all just come from that one chart. And I think this is a permanent condition.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is how it is now. I think the energy crisis we're in is more or less,
Chronic.
it's chronic at this point. We
Not
don't have
acute.
good point. Yeah, I don't think we have an acute energy crisis. It's chronic.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right?
You know, we didn't get around to talking about this, and I don't want to go fully into it tonight, but I do feel the need to bring up the idea that if anybody is taking pharmaceuticals,
Ooh, good point.
that you should have as much as you're able to sort of squirrel away on hand so that you can gradually taper yourself off. Of course, if it's, a life-saving drug and you can't live without it, try to do the best you can to either stock up on that or to find multiple sources for it. But I have no idea if those things are going to be available in the future. And that actually concerns me even more. I mean, food obviously is universal, but when you break it down to individual health and wellness, I mean, a lot of people are on things, and one wouldn't know that because until recently, one's health choices weren't disclosed to the entire world, right? And so I feel like there are a lot of people that, take things for whatever, everything from ADHD to depression, anxiety, all these things that alter your brain chemicals, and to come off of those, it's no walk in the park. It's really not. And it's not any more exciting to try and do that under crazy, stressful circumstances. But I don't know. I really hope that people can do the best that they can to be brave and sort of, and this is not medical advice, by the way. I'm not authorized to give that.
Well, what was always embarrassing is when we travel and we go to someplace like Mexico or Costa Rica or most recently Belize, you go into the pharmacies there, and these medicines that people will desperately need are there to be purchased over the counter.
Right.
Right?
Antibiotics, all of it.
Antibiotics, you can get benzodiazepines if you need them, you can get SSRIs. There are things you can get. Here in this country, of course, you have to be on it's prescription only in the United States. And even then, because of plans, because of rules, because of all the complexity they put on it, many times you're not allowed to have more than a 1 month supply.
No, you're not.
Often it's a 28-day supply for whatever reason.
Yep.
You know, but that's it,
Yeah.
right? And what if you're on something like insulin, which is just a non-negotiable thing, right?
Right.
Or if you are on a benzo, those, you can't just drop those. That's life. That's what happened to Jordan Peterson.
You don't say.
Yeah. No, those you can't just stop. You can't. You have to be very careful with that shit.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Indeed.
So speaking of like not having leadership that's any good, hello from Fiji. What time is it in Fiji? I wouldn't even know. I'm going to guess it's exactly 12 hours distant from us. This is a starting point. It's halfway around the clock. So good morning. Check this out. This just came out. Ottawa by law. Please be advised, say our Canadian communists up north, a number of fine amounts have been increased so as to ensure a safe and respectful Canada Day, which apparently has to do with being like complete simpering, stuck under the jackbooted thugs kind of thing. Is that what Canada is about? Because it's amazing. Look at this. Increased fine amounts. Unusual noise. $1,000, right?
Is that from the horns?
Unusual noise. I mean, do you have to like, are we going to have to get the Monty Python guys here to like sort of weigh in? Shouting, 1,000. So, hey, so sorry for all you half-deaf people out there who have to communicate with your wokeness.
I'm one of them.
with your even more half-deaf partners. But get this, urination / taking a dump on a sidewalk, $1,000. Encumber a highway, 1,000. Idling, 1,000. They're all 1,000. So this means they're equal. This means that as far as Ottawa, Canada is concerned, the Ottawa Police and City of Ottawa are concerned, there's an equal amount of damage to a society. There's equal amount of harm as to whether you make an unusual sound or you take a dump on a sidewalk in front of a family. Those are equal.
No, I don't think they are.
Well, that's what an equal sort of a fine tells me right
I
there.
know.
Those should be different numbers, but you can clearly see that this is how they are so good at what they do up there.
I know.
They're nudging. So really what they're trying to do is say, hey, listen, you truckers, don't get any ideas. And what the truckers did was they honked so they could say it's
pay it with GoFundMe?
an
Sorry.
unusual noise, right? Maybe they shouted. Maybe they encumbered a highway. I'm gonna have to, I don't even know what that necessarily means. Or they were idling. But look what they snuck in there. You know what, those truckers, you know what? They're just as likely to idle, honk, or take a dump on the sidewalk. Like they snuck that one in there to just like, to me, that's a nudge.
Mm.
Right? That's how I read
Sure.
things like this. That's a nudge. That's a
I
that's a
can see
guilt
that.
by association. Like here's some things we won't tolerate anymore because of the truckers.
They were such jerks. They came in and cleaned up. I mean, they defecated on our.
Hey,
Seriously.
Thanks for the support, DC. Character on the floor laughing really hard. Well, we crack ourselves up too, so that's awesome to have you in there sharing on that. But this is just insane to me. Sorry, Canada. I don't know what's going on up there, but it's pretty bad. And by the way, talking with people up there, I find that a lot of people in law enforcement, in the military, are no longer happy with all that. They're leaving. They're just exiting. But the fear there is that the good people leave, right? The ones who say, this is intolerable, the ones with actual integrity. And next thing you know, you have a military, a police, and RCMP, which are now just staffed with the people who didn't have that integrity,
Right.
right? Or
Yeah.
more weighted towards those people. I'm sure there's people with integrity who remain for whatever reasons. But generally speaking, when a company is going down in flames, you know who leaves first? The best ones. Because they catch the whiff early and they're like, I'm not spending my time with you guys doing this.
This is BS.
Off they go.
I know. I could see that happening.
Yeah. But speaking of unserious leaders, like let's carry on here because this is just unbelievable to me. So this just comes out in Bloomberg. One of Europe's biggest automakers warns after a landmark deal to phase out combustion engines that the industry is doomed unless electrical vehicles get less expensive. They're aiming to cut the cost of an electric vehicle by 40% by 2030. That's pretty fast. If EVs don't get cheaper, they say the market will collapse, and it's a big challenge. So all the way down at the bottom, this head of this giant company is saying they will comply with the decision, but policymakers appear not to care whether automakers have enough raw materials to underpin the shift. Ta-da. We'll just legislate it.
Wow.
Well, we want electric cars. Okay, where's the electricity going to come from? Do you have the materials for that? Where are all your charging stations going to come from? How much do they cost? What's their range? How blah, blah, blah. There's a million things to consider.
I think this is going to be good.
How so?
This whole thing. Because I think it's like we got to just turn over and compost a huge population of people in government and decision-making, positions.
Technocrats, bureaucrats.
It's all, just
Rule-
turn
the
it all
rule
over.
makers.
Let's be done. Let's start over.
Now, if I could wave my magic policy wand, if I was elected, I would say, here's my new rule. I have one rule. You may pass a law, but you have to tell me which 3 are coming off the books.
There you go.
It's a 3-for-1 reverse stock split. That's how it is. I mean, come on. We're just trying to do this development project here in Massachusetts and blah, 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 blah. And this, the guy at the building permit office told me that this is how thick the new rules were that came in the last code book up changed. And so the code book's now this thick. He said that when he started this business, he's about my age, he said when he started this business, the entire code book was half that size. Now it's this big.
Wow. City phone book.
They legislate everything. Everything. Like a doorway probably has 30 different legislate. How high is it? How wide is it? Does it have skylights in it? Does it have this? What
Does it have an
material is it
exit
made out of? How high is the threshold? Can a wheelchair get over it? How deep is it's like unbelievable amounts of legislation and regulation. So that's what these unserious leaders, that's what they know how to do. They like to make laws. So they're making these laws, but they've passed that they just made a landmark deal to phase out Drogue, unusual noise whilst taking a dump, 2000.
All right, this make me blush. Ryan, turn back on that cooling, will you?
I'm pretty sure every dump's a $2,000. Unless we can, redefine unusual. It's got to make some fun of it. But this is unserious. This is unserious. They made a landmark deal. We're just going to phase out combustion engines. Oh, really? Right? This was like Germany saying, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to wade into this war with Russia, and we're just going to, but not really, but we'll send some missiles into Ukraine, and we'll let Russia know we're very happy. We'll pass sanctions against them. And then we're going to go, oh my God, where's our gas going to come from? That's pretty unserious, but it's serious, right? These are people making really big decisions that they can't even begin to guess what the implications of them are.
No.
But I can tell you it's going to wreck a lot of things. Like they're going to face a collapse of the auto market in Europe if these rules are passed. And they haven't even gone the distance of saying, well, do we have enough lithium for this little dream of ours, right? That would be the most basic sort of analysis you would run.
Well, not only that, but I mean, the way the stock market and everything has been treated by the elites, right? The global elites. We don't have a middle class anymore. And so they're asking to bring the price down so that the people over here can afford it. But obviously those people have not been treated fairly, or in essence, there's been a scam going on that's benefited, the top 1%. I mean, how did they expect things to go?
I think the trucker thing was actually far more dangerous than most people realized to the elite. Because the truckers in Canada were dangerously close to igniting, and they did ignite a lot of similar sympathy adventures in other truckers around the world. But they were dangerously close to having rallied to this idea, which was, if we just stop driving for a month, what happens? Turns out the truckers actually have all the power. They have all the power. All of it. If truckers ever decided to stop trucking, this whole experiment is over. I don't care how elite your elites are. I don't care how many vaccine passports they have up their sleeve or what digital currencies they want to come out. If the people don't go along with it, it's lights out. And that's always what happens at these fourth turning moments when cultures finally say, yeah, we're not so sure about these elites. Now, those elites could have been, you know, the Aztec high priests and priestesses, you know, taking the kids from the outer slums and removing their hearts and, you know, praying for rain. And people put up with that for a while, but when they decide they've had enough of that, ooh, you know, it's over. It gets ugly too.
I know.
It really does. So anyway, these unserious leaders are pushing us in lots and lots of directions. And like here, this was the dumbest thing. So California, I have a running competition at Peak Prosperity for the dumbest thing California has done. And we've turned it into the So Far Award. Because every day, like they can't outdo that. And they do, right? Just last week, California's like, we're going to give $1,000 to everybody to combat and to help them with inflation. Next year, we're going to give people $4,000 to combat the inflation that just, it's just dumb. Look at this. Look at this. The California eviction law upheld, so it already passed through, and a judge upheld it. It requires property owners to pay 1 month rent to tenants who are being evicted. It also limits rent increases to 10% a year.
What?
So even if like your input cost as a landlord went up 40%,
My
right?
brain was like, huh?
I know, but just the first one, just that first. So that top part. So what do you think people are? So you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. The incentive here. I'm sort of struggling along. I'm like, well, it takes about 6 months to rent me. You know what? I'm not paying my rent. And I'm going to string this out. 6 months later, when they finally do get me evicted, they have to pay me 1 month's rent.
Yeah, I don't understand that, but that's all right.
This is going to mess a lot of things up, and I can't even imagine wanting to be a landlord in California under that set of rules. This is awful.
What? Why were the property owners the people that were responsible for that? That doesn't make any sense
It
to
doesn't.
me.
It's completely unconstitutional, as I said. So that's
It
a
is.
taking. That's a taking by the government, right? They're taking the property of, you know, your monetary
somebody
property
else, yeah.
of somebody else, saying, no, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to you. There's a process for that. They didn't follow any of that. It doesn't matter. Judge said, oh, that's legal. So the whole thing is just, we don't have functioning institutions here anymore. It's broken. Whole thing's kind of broke. Whole thing is just a little bit broke. So then, but if you like mega disasters, this one's going to be awesome. The G7 countries get together and they're like, you know what? Let's cap the price of Russian crude. So Russia tries to sell us crude, and their G7 is going to enforce that somehow, right? Russia wants to sell crude to India, and we're going to say, okay, but we're not going to let India pay you more than $75 a barrel for that. Ha ha. Well, A, how are you going to enforce that? But B, that's going to take a lot of Russian oil off the market at the worst possible time. So as I just covered for all of my subscribers in depth today, again, at Peak Prosperity, if you understand the supply-demand balance of oil, or rather the imbalance of supplies being exceeded by demand at this point in time and dwindling rapidly, you have a great insight into what's going to happen in the future. It's really not terribly difficult analysis to conduct. It's pretty straightforward. How much do we have? How much are we burning? Whoa, this is bigger than this. It's going to be a huge supply shock coming. And so on top of that, our unserious leaders are like, you know what would be a good idea? Let's see if we can force some more Russian oil off the market. You know, and so what this was saying here is that this article was basically an analysis by Swedish analyst at the Swedish bank SEB said, Bjarn Schildrup said, plans are a recipe for disaster. I agree, Bjarn. Totally accurate. And this could easily make prices go to double from here, and go much further than that. So at least $200 a barrel.
Wow.
The group, which includes U.S., Germany, and the U.K., it's like the Three Stooges right now, said it may attempt to stop the transportation of all Russian oil not purchased at or below a certain price. What? Again, we'll just legislate the outcome we want. This is how out of touch they are. They think that reality is what you make it. So we think oil's a little high. Why don't we just say it's less?
If we write it 50 times, it'll be true. Or print it. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It is laughable, but it's disturbing on another level. So for everybody that's been paying attention, I mean, this is what we've been waiting for. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we've been rehearsing,
Mm-hmm.
more or less, the show we've been getting ready for.
Yeah.
But I don't feel ready, even, as much preparation as I know we've made. I worry about the attention we haven't had time to pay our farm and
Mm-hmm.
the systems that we still need help setting up with here.
I know we need a lot of help still.
We'll have to have a work party or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
That's
true.
the hard part, though. As soon as everybody needs help at the same time.
Not a band account writing in, if inflation continues, we can pay loans overnight.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
Well,
Somebody else was talking
not
about
just
that with me
overnight.
on our trip.
but eventually,
School loans, for
so
example.
so down in so when here's when inflation's bad. You get paid every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's really bad when you get paid twice a day. So this is what was happening in Weimar, Germany. At the end of their hyperinflationary outcome, people would get paid twice a day. You'd get paid at lunchtime and then at the end of the day because people had to run out and spend it before it went even further
Wow.
down the monetary hellhole, right? So
I'd never heard of that.
yeah, there will come a time.
But also, what is the financial? Somebody was talking to me about school loans and how at this rate, basically that we're just talking about having debt right now and what that, what happens with inflation over time.
Inflation's been a permanent condition your whole life. Mine too. It's just there's no deflationary. It's always there, but we want it contained. 2% means you only lose half the value of your money every 35 years. At 10%, you lose half the value of money in 10 years. 7 years, sorry. 10% is 7 years, yeah. But it's much higher than they've been saying. And when, not if, but when these oil supply shocks come through, people say, oh my God, oil at 200 a barrel, it's unthinkable. Actually, gasoline right now, where we're down in Miami, was a little over $6 a gallon. California, most places, it's $7. That's as if oil is already at $250 a barrel.
Right.
So we're already paying $250 a barrel at the pump right now. The reason for that is complex. Again, I go over it with my subscribers. It has to do with refinery capacity. It's a complex system, but we have these monkeys trying to take a complex system and legislate outcomes, and it's literally like having a 5-year-old perform surgery. It's just not the cognitive awareness of the actual details required to pull that off are not yet formed. I mean, that's what gives me the least amount of hope in this, is just how ignorant our quote unquote leadership seems to be.
Yeah.
Right? You see, like Rand Paul was asking Fauci directly, hey, do you have any studies that show that any children have been prevented from going to the hospital because of the vaccine trials? No.
Huh.
So, what do you think's coming?
What do I think's coming?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'm getting better after this illness, so I can feel this fluttery feeling in my body, but I haven't registered that it was something off in the world necessarily. But I've been ready. I mean, I knew something was coming. My whole life I've known that. And I was told that as well because I grew up in a pretty conservative sort of religious background, but that the end of the world, was something that was actually going to be coming.
Yeah.
And a lot of I was also in a private school that taught those same teachings. And I grew up in that sort of environment, so I was told every day that this life was transient and that something else would be happening in my lifetime. And so it's actually sort of bizarre that it seems to be
a lot
following
of
that
generations
trajectory.
have heard that.
I know.
It never happens so far, right? But yeah, here we are. So, what was that last comment? I missed that, Ryan. From James, and thanks for the support, James. Do you think this is all about the New World Order? Love your channel. Keep up the great work. Thank you, James. Yeah, it is. It's a lot about the New World Order. It is. And so, listen, I worked at a lot of large corporations, and in my own business, in my own life, I understand what it means to have a strategy. And to run a conspiracy. Here's a conspiracy. P&G is going to figure out how to outcompete Colgate for a key market shelf, in a store. That's a conspiracy. A bunch of people get together and they plan to their own benefit, right? Against some other people. Right? It's just how people are, right? Watch Game of Thrones, read any history book. To think that we somehow don't have that going on in this day and age is naive thinking, extremely unsophisticated thinking. Nothing's changed about humans. Humans are humans. We're wired how we are. So there's a group of people out there who I think have access to the same information we do, which says there just aren't enough resources in the world in this next 10, 20, 30 years for it to continue as is. So we have two choices. One, we can be honest with people and say, we goofed. We, the leaders who should have been making sure this moment didn't arrive, we didn't do that. But we're the right people to carry you for the next part. Trust us, right? It's not going to go over that well, particularly when they do the whole, this part of the story, you have to eat crickets and take cold showers, and we're going to keep the filet mignons in our yachts and our jets, but trust me, this is fair, right? That's just a bad story. It's not going to work out. So they had to use plan B in their story, which is, well, let's lie to people, or let's manufacture a crisis, or let's use the powerful organs of social media and politics to drive the usual thing you have to do when you want people to do something they don't want to do, like start a war, get into war, make sacrifices. You got to give them a little story. So they use those stories super effectively. Now, COVID was a ridiculously good story. It's awesome for creating that mass psychosis condition, right? It's like an invisible foe that's going to kill you at any moment, right? And so you get that fear, and when people's fear stems, the amygdala, fear brainstem action is activated, we tend to make really bad decisions. Our field of focus narrows down, and Evie and I run into this. We see people who are still terrified. Evie sat next to a woman on the flight back, last flight up. What was she doing?
Shh, she's local. No, no, she's probably not listening to us. She was wiping down the seats and like every surface with antibacterial wipes.
Sure. I mean, but that's a level of fear. Like there's some sense that I can control this thing by wiping down the surfaces. Now, this is an airborne virus, so, you'd have to wave them through the air too.
It was pretty strong. I mean, I couldn't smell anything already at that point, but...
Yeah, so from Zach writing in, thanks for the support, Zach. I returned home FL from China, June 2020. My Freedom community adopted Max Fear, masks, stacking, plants, furniture to avoid me, warned delivery, etc. Yeah. Yeah. That happened a lot. So a lot of us lost friends, families, neighbors, colleagues, jobs. A lot of things happened. And you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I think this is the perfect time to talk about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So this fall, if you can make it, and I know it's tricky for people traveling at this time, when there's uncertainty and whatnot, I get it. So if it feels right and you can pull it off, awesome. We'd love to have you at our event here at Honey Badger Farm. It's September 22nd through the 25th. And it's going to be all these regional, or whoever can make it, from all over the world potentially, folks that are like-minded, who care about these issues, but I have a gut feeling are bound to become the future leaders in our world. When the dust settles and all these jackasses are not in positions of power. I hope that some of the fine folks that we know, are able to stand up and make big changes.
What's that? Wait, a gathering here at the farm?
Yeah, I'm having a party.
What's this?
You're invited.
What's it going to be like? I mean, is there anything? Is this going to be like a Grateful Dead concert without the music? Like glow sticks and awkward dancing?
No,
what's happening?
I hope. I don't know. No, it's going to be, we live in this beautiful area out in the country. There's a mountain, Gobble Mountain nearby, lots of beautiful maple trees. It's going to be peak or close to peak leaf season up here in New England. People are going to be assembling out in a field, so it's pretty much going to be camping if you're interested in that, or staying at an Airbnb or something locally. Right. But we're going to just gather around a fire, exchange skills.
All right, so here's
Ideas, thoughts? Is that what you meant?
yeah. No, I just want to give people a sense of what's going to happen here. So this is going to be really amazing. We're running an experiment here. So Václav Havel said that in surviving through the horrible oppression, when he was in Czechoslovakia, you had to, they created parallel structures. So that's where people are getting back together again and re-knitting these social threads that you need to be there for each other. So we want to help. I think this whole next 10, 20, 30 years is going to be about the strength of our communities and how strong we have those communities. A lot of us don't know a lot about communities. Like myself, I grew up in just standard suburban, like areas where you didn't even have to know your neighbor's name if you didn't want to. Didn't matter, right? But certainly we didn't go deep into those relationships. So how do we begin to knit these actual relationships that matter a lot? And so when you look out into how cultures durable cultures exist. So it could be the Catholic Church, could be Mennonites, it could be Boy Scouts, could be Mary Kay Cosmetics. There are cultures out there, and they always have four things. They have hierarchy, so you know where you fit in that organization, right? There's Cub Scouts and there's Eagle Scouts. You have rituals, right? Catholic Church has tons of rituals, but for the Boy Scouts, they have secret handshakes, right? And little signs that they do or whatever. Yeah.
Hunger Games.
Right. And then you have your regalia. So the Pope's got the big hat. Boy Scouts have the neckerchiefs, right? So regalia. But it's this last one that really matters, and it's mentoring. And so what mentoring is the act of taking something you know and sharing it with somebody else. And it's not a one-way process. Mentoring done well is not a giving of something like it's not this person's consuming and I'm feeding, right? It's not that. Mentoring is a two-way process. It has an active, willing recipient and it has a caring person on the other side. Two-way. So we want to set up, and we've asked people to show up ready to be in both of those roles or one of them, right? But for sure you're showing up either as an eager, ready to willing to learn person, or you're showing up with some skill that you have. And these skills could be anything. It could be I raise and butcher rabbits. I know how to syndicate multifamily apartment deals. I know everything there is to know about scything. Whatever that thing is that you've got as a special talent, we're asking you to bring that. And so there will be people camping out. There'll be people staying at local hotels. We'll have food trucks. We'll have campfires. We'll have all of that. We'll have tents, big tents to huddle under and things like that. So that's the idea. But the idea is to begin practicing, not talking about.
That's right.
But practicing this whole idea of what it means to come together and to start knitting those threads around this framework of saying mentoring is an important thing. Mm-hmm. And of course, we'll have secret handshakes and neckerchiefs and all the rest too.
Yeah, we'll have our own flavor of that. I didn't get to finish sharing what was going to be happening, but amongst all of the activities that we're going to be doing, we are going to be hopefully swapping stories and feeling at home with one another, even though we have this short period of time together. And who knows when we'll get a chance to be in person again based on what happens in the future. But I believe that anybody who feels called to be there should definitely come and reach out to us about that if you would like some more information. There are going to be some special things happening, and it was just absolutely wonderful last year when we did it. Did you enjoy that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was incredible.
Oh, well, I was exhausted at the end of it, but maybe slaughtering 3 pigs and...
2.
2. That's right. Felt like 50, but...
I know. Yeah, we processed our pigs and said goodbye to them. They were friends by the end of the summer, and we had a lot of wonderful folks that showed up and shared things, everything from how do I outfit my house with solar to here's how you stitch up a wound using, we actually, recycled our pig parts, and one of our friends was able to teach.
An absolute world-class leader in solar design and installation, does mega projects in places like Abu Dhabi, talking about principles of that. Everything. Didn't matter. The point is that people have their passions and skills, and they brought them and they shared them. In many cases, they came with supplies, bags of knitting materials or rabbits, right? It's all good.
Great.
So that's what that's going to be. So you can find that at peakprosperity.com. Check that out. That's our annual thing. From Kyle Bass. Hey, thanks for what you do. Thanks. Appreciate that, Kyle. Thanks for being here part of it. It's meaningless without you. So this is why we do what we do. We're just trying to send out the alerts and the alarms, but hopefully also providing inspiration and modeling, and we walk the talk. At this last event I was at, which was George Gammon's Rebel Capitalist, great group of people there. A lot of people didn't know about me, but I had this one piece of feedback that I loved from one person. Came up and he said, "Hey, you're exactly like you present yourself online." Yep, it's just how I am.
There you
Right?
go.
So what you see is what you get. No subterfuge, just is what it is. I wanted to we have to adjust to this new normal. And so as we look at how this whole energy descent is going to happen and this chronic condition of energy insufficiency, this Trevor wrote here on our site today in response to this thread around this informed consent episode said, quote, "I'm quite envious of generations of Americans who could raise a family on a single income. The expendable income keeps shrinking, with my wife and I both working full-time to provide for a family. I want sound money." I do think sound money could help. And Chuck in Belize, hey Chuck, wrote, "My dad did that. My wife and I almost did that. My kids simply cannot do that. Their kids, who knows? Grandpa's going to talk to granddaughter about that very subject. At this point, wisdom is just about the only thing I can pass along. This is a turning and we're in it." Back when, we're talking about those single incomes, that's when we had massive amounts of surplus energy. Net energy per capita from oil was at its highest in this country. And so it was, you can support a lot off of that. And then when that starts falling, now you need 2 incomes, and then you need 3, and eventually we all live in these multi-generational homes again, right? And there's no such thing as retirement. Once you understand things through the energy lens, that's the work I do in the world, as to help people understand that component, I think it all becomes clear. It just has to do with how much. If there's a lot of surplus energy, we could have 0 jobs per person, But as energy declines a little bit, we're going to have to get used to working more, longer, harder. But farming's easy, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sure it is.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to weed when it's 90 degrees out. No, I think you're right. I think it is that it's going to be an adjustment, just like everything else. And
Yeah.
and like you said, everything in retrospect is going to feel like it's inadequate and not enough.
Yep. So I agree. And pursuant to, check this out. This just also came up in that same thread at our site about this from Mystery Met writing, "Work just put out notice on shortages. They just told everyone." So this person works in a fairly large company, industrial company. "They told everyone to buy more supplies than they need right now for everything. Supplies for months. Industrial Prepper Club. Note my boss and I had discussed this last year, and I had ordered some big ticket long lead items, but this is interesting to see it become the directive to the whole plant now."
Wow.
End quote. Hey, thank you, Linton. Linton Herbert, very much appreciate the support. But yeah, so this is a memo. So a memo went out. Hey, just buy stuff. I put that up because this is when I do my information scouting in the world. These are the kinds of early anecdotes that I harvest and I put out because I read a lot into this. This is a month before you read it in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, or it's out on CNN or wherever it is. A month before that, you get little feeds like this. This is a critical piece of information right here. This is really important. When a large industrial concern is sending out a memo saying, just buy stuff, right? It's only a hop, skip, and a jump from there to where lots of businesses are doing that. And then it's self-reflexively creating its own shortages, because when everybody tries to buy something, like right now, if everybody said, I'm just going to, I have a half a tank of gas, let me top it off. If everybody does that at once, the whole system gets drained of gasoline. There just isn't enough for everybody to do that. And we're kind of counting on everybody not doing that. It's like fractional reserve tank filling, right? As long as everybody doesn't do it all at once, there isn't a bank run and we're cool. Right. But this is how bank runs get started. This is an industrial bank run right here. So I just want to bring that to your attention, which is why it's things like this that coalesce into me saying, I have a bad feeling about all this, right? Because these are the accelerations. The pace of that change is really, really rapid right now. So there. That's all I have to say about that.
So, in my opinion, I mean, I think, as I can feel you gyrating, by the way, energetically. You're like, whoa. I track you.
What's it like?
I don't know how to explain it on camera, but you definitely have your usual sort of calm, centered self is a little bit excited, which I can sense. But I I imagine that it's going to be like everything that you practice, right? You practice doing things, and then in the moment of stress, you're 50% as accurate, whether it's shooting a gun or something else, as you might be otherwise. And I think that everything we can do to sort of keep our eyes wide open, recognize that we're going to get some tunnel vision, right, out of fear, but to try to not let fear become the dominant, emotional, strategy, or for lack of a better thing. I think that's going to be important. So however we can calm our minds, bring ourselves back to our center, rein in our emotions and try to think as logically and clearly as we can, it's going to be important.
I agree, and I think the point of the adjustment reaction work framing is to say, but don't try and stifle that. Don't take a pill to knock down the anxiety. Don't try and do anything to it. Just understand that it's there and it's normal, and in fact experience it, if you will, so that it has an opportunity to not get suppressed, because it's all that suppressed stuff, all that fear and anxiety down, and it just pops out all at once, potentially. So we're coming into the close, but I just want to do one thing real quick, and that is to plug what we do at Peak Prosperity for those of you who don't know. So this is an example. I just took the screenshot today. These are some of the types of premium content that we have there. If you like the kind of way that we put information together, if you like the presentations I do, you want more of it, who knows why that would be true, but if you did, you would come by Peak Prosperity. Here's an example of things. On the left is we have a number of tiers of subscribers, and information scouts get part 2s of That's My Tuesday work. You get part 1 out in public here on YouTube, but then you get part 2, which goes into a little more depth. But if you want to go even deeper than that, the Insiders, which is on the right side of the screen, these are just some things that I'm doing daily, quick hits here, usually 5 days a week, talking about, inside the stunning birth data, which is that just hit, which is pretty stunning, looking at what's going on with a lot of energy and the shortages and things like this. So these are the things we talk about at Peak Prosperity. If you want more of that, that's the content, but the most important thing is the community that's there. So to Evie's point, to remain centered, to remain grounded, to have the ability to, as calmly as possible, move through and make decisions and not be paralyzed with anxiety or with abject fear, that requires the other people around us to be our support systems, and we can be their support system. So that's what we're doing at Peak Prosperity. We've planted the flag, we assembled the tribe, and I trust that the magic is in the people who show up, and I'm never disappointed. So you saw some of the insights that I shared with some of the comments there. That's what we do. So we'd love to have you there, love to have your support if that's something that would work for you. So, Evie, are you going to close us out here tonight?
I sure can, although I just changed my mind about what I was going to do. So
you did? All right.
Ryan's got something.
All right. Dutch farmers currently blocking German border to protest new environmental restrictions. Oh, yeah. Thank you for the support, CVA Buck. Yeah, if people haven't seen it, there's tractors all over the road and very angry Dutch farmers at this point in time. And this is, again, I talked about those shocks that are coming from all the directions. And this is one of them where, for some reason, now European leaders and the leaders in the Netherlands thought that this would be a good time to penalize farmers for, I think, putting too much something in the atmosphere, nitrogen or something. Anyway, I don't totally follow what their rationale is, but they are busy saying farmers are responsible for too much pollution, so let's really crank down on them, and the farmers are very unhappy about that. So thanks for that insight. And again, it's just like, now? What an odd moment in time to say, you know what we need? Less farming.
And fertilizer.
Who needs that stuff?
Less fertilizer.
Listen,
too.
if there's no food next year, we'll pass a law that there is food. That's where we're at.
My Lord.
Last one.
All right, last one. From Mary Ruth Eves Herrera, a Shiba dog dressed in a traditional outfit waving Japanese fans. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for your support.
All right. Here's what I got. And this is just, it's part of the beacon, I feel like, to find our tribe and for the people that want to be here to find us. So it's not by me. It's by this woman, Araya Mountain Dreamer. And you might have heard me read it before. It's called The Invitation. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dreams, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals or have become shriveled and closed from the fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, or to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you're telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and still not betray your own soul. I want to know if you can be faithful and therefore be trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty every day, and if you can source your life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of a lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after a night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done for the children. It doesn't interest me who you are or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company that you keep in the empty moments.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here with us. And by the way, if you are expecting a part 2 of this, because sometimes people do, there is a special feature which is on Inside Take on oil supply shock on the way. That would be more data and more analysis around what's really coming. So if you're looking for it, it's already there. It's already up. Maybe people are already commenting on it. So that just went up about an hour ago or so. With that, thank you very much for being here tonight. This is Informed Consent. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Martinson, here with Evie Botello and Ryan in the studio, Mike in the comments, and Morgan, of course, helping to hold everything down with Aaron, making sure it all runs. That's our team. That's who we are. This is what we do. Thank you so much for being part of this. Can't wait to be here with you again. And remember, if you want more, come by peakprosperity.com, where we're hanging out all the time. All right. Until next time, be well, be safe, get resilient.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.
And plant a garden. All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.